He won't help you here.
What's up, Goth Gamer Nation? I can't take it anymore. I just gotta tell you how blessed we've been with indie projects. It's that time again. Why did I write that so enthusiastic? It's that time again! Time again to look at some upcoming projects that I found worth following, worth watching, worth wishlisting, and most importantly, worth giving money to if you can after taking care of your own basic needs, of course. A little update from the last round. Moroi, the isometric grimdark fairy tale, was released in full around 2 months ago, I think. And after a brief stumble out of the gate and some patching, it's sitting at very positive reviews, but could definitely use some more eyes and more coverage on it. Skin Deep, the quirky sci-fi cat-centric immersive sim, was also released in full this April, and was met with thunderous applause. Not unlike The Way Liberty Dies, Star Wars, one of the bad ones, I can't remember. Now sitting at overwhelmingly positive reviews. Stygian, Outer Gods, the first-person survival horror game with RPG elements, was released in early access, and I've actually played a bit of that. Not all of the content made available, but in brief, it's interesting because, as I made clear in the last Next Fest video, the entire circumstance of its existence and association with a game that disappointed me was very, very strange. But stranger still, this game is really solid. Fantastic atmosphere, tense stealth gameplay, creeping through houses of those twisted by madness is effectively creepy. At points I'd knock something over and hear a shuffle of movement or deranged muttering from a different floor, and you can see shadows moving about through the floorboards. There is shared DNA with modern Resident Evil games, but a number of mechanics that differentiate it. I think it's on track to be a surprisingly good Lovecraft experience. About the only issues I experienced was optimization is kind of bad right now. I have a PC that should be able to handle this, but I spent like 20 minutes just turning options on and off, trying to get the frame rate in a place that wasn't driving me insane. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's a part of the Lovecraftian element.
Alright, there's a dog over there, so if I just... Alright. Come get some.
Also, the emphasis on crafting feels a bit like a remnant of a fad where everything needed some variation of that. But I will admit, this is very much a me thing. And what else we got? The stunning remake of Benoît Socal's Amazon has been released. For all you point-and-click lickers out there, I'm sure that made sense when I wrote it. Also released after decades, Frozen in Amber, the third-person action pirate adventure game Captain Blood, and dystopian walking sim Karma: The Dark World, all of which seemingly received well. I would have more to report on that if I had the time. Okay? Gaming is alive and well, gamers. For now. Don't know how to pronounce this. Mrak? I don't know if I pronounced the exclamation point. Is that an upside down I? This game is an upcoming first-person shooter with immersive sim elements from developer Bre. It's B-R-E exclamation point. Again, that one could be an I too. It's set in an alt history 2003 Hokkaido, which is now a part of Russia. You play as some kind of person, I think, who is roped into becoming an assassin. If I'm reading environmental clues correct, seemingly as part of a program to pay off debilitating debt, but it's light on lore with the promise of more in a full release. Hard to talk around it without addressing the unique art style where everything is depicted as a sort of monochrome wireframe, which fittingly ties into the game's tech dystopia setting, full of shadow organizations and corporate overreach. The demo has you free running atop the impossibly tall rooftops of skyscrapers, featuring Russified Japanese company names like Panasonica, while tracking down your targets. The fast movement and platforming was intimidating at first, but eventually I got the hang of it, which I mention only because I have an intense physiological response to heights, and it has been a discomfort in other games. So even though my hands were sweating profusely, I felt pretty confident in eyeballing gaps and sort of pogoing up the sides of buildings. I don't know how the physics of these actions work, but it is satisfying in its own way. Not sure if going forward this is the sort of loop that will encompass the full game, but in In the demo, you can find groups of private security types guarding engineers, one of which you have to kill, but that requires some exploration that can lead you into smaller side goals to pursue if you want to be rewarded with items. There's a lot of absolute pandering to my sensibilities and quirks of design that I love to see perpetuated, like an inventory backpack that you have to sling onto the ground and sort through, or a typing-based hacking minigame. If you fail to take out an enemy squad quickly, one of them may run off and call for a helicopter to swing by, and a few more guys will rappel down looking for you. Yeah, there are some rough edges and bugs I came across.
Damn. Maybe he was the only one right side up in this topsy-turvy world.
But it's overall a very exciting project with a firm idea that prioritizes having you do cool shit, and was successful enough at doing so that I overcame a deep primal fear to play through it twice. Acts of Blood is an upcoming third-person beat-em-up game from developer Exel Team, set in the Indonesian city of Bandung. This game follows Hendra, a leather-clad street fighter out to avenge the death of his family at the hands of a corrupt businessman. The plot, which is a bit of a blur at the moment, is very much the setup you'd find in like an old-school VHS martial arts movie, with a slipcover showing a guy kicking very high on it. All you need to know is that there's a bunch of fuckers that need to be punched in the head. Go get them. And I'm pleased to announce that is precisely the aspect that feels really fun. I'm not a big fan of games that follow the sort of Batman Arkham school of combat, but I found Acts of Blood, while certainly a work in progress, was more exciting moment to moment, and threw me for a loop by incorporating weapons, both ranged and melee, and thrown melee. There's a bit of a heightened reality about the physics of things that makes every fight full of spectacle. The regular guys you'll be fighting pose a pretty reasonable challenge, with bigger ones being harder to take down, but either drop pretty quickly when guns are involved. However, we do get to fight one boss in the demo that is, of course for no reason impervious to even an AK. But obviously I'm always aware that I'm playing a video game that wants to curate a specific challenge for me. There are implications of things not shown off really in the demo, like customizable outfits and parkour sequences, but I'm very easily swayed by a game that lets me throw a sledgehammer at a dude's head.
Oh my god! I don't even feel good about that. Poor guy was just minding his own.
So on that front, you've made a sale, so you might as well stop selling. Named Mojave is an upcoming psychological horror adventure game from developer Stargazer Studio, and I'm adding this one retroactively last minute because I initially felt that it seemed so much like a self-contained mini story for like a game jam that I couldn't imagine where you take it. Like, this is the first act? Where does this story go? But then I stewed on it and began to feel that, well, I'd really like to see that, whatever it is. You play some kind of nameless guy whose car breaks down in the middle of the desert, and seeking help in a nearby house is instead met by an anthropomorphic cat man that is willing to help you out with your car if you do something for him. Hunt down some wild game. Now, I should have guessed this reveal, seeing as though he's an animal person, but yes, this wild game he wants you to hunt are like a regular nuclear family of elk or some shit, and it reads that you'd probably hesitate and try to side with them, and then that falls apart really quickly. But that premise alone, just that, is so darkly comedic and fun, and it has pretty pitch-perfect comedy timing for a game, which is one of the hardest things to pull off, I've found. But yeah, that's why I was like, well, what now? But that in itself was so impressively handled that I'm down for whatever other fucked up place this wants to go. Am I friends with this guy? Am I his captive? Should I be afraid of him glaring at me from the other room? I don't know what the vibe is, and that makes me real anxious. It's a real weird little guy of a game.
Oh shit, okay. I'm feeling this too. Oh.
Holstin is an upcoming isometric survival horror game from developer Sanka, set in a 1990s Polish town suffering from a scientific disaster that has left writhing masses of slime all over its streets, which has possessed many citizens, turning them into hobbling, zombie-adjacent monsters. We take control of Tomasz, who's arrived to find his friend Bartek after they sent an ominous fax message and then broke communication. The marvel of this game is kind of its art style. which is at a glance pixel art with 3D geometry that you can see as you pivot the camera around you to set positions and get a better look at areas. But once you're made to protect yourself, the camera swings down behind your shoulder and you can see that it's really fully 3D with a pixelated disguise over it. On top of this, there are a number of scenarios in which the game does just become pixel art for a moment, which only adds to this illusion. While that is impressive enough to warrant eyeballs on the project, it's also just a solid, well-paced survival horror game in its own right, full of all the expected puzzles, exploration, and frantic combat.
Yeah, hang on, fellas. Hang on, let me just take a little swig out of this.
Also, I don't have the strongest grasp on the story or how the world of this game works, so I don't know if there's an expressed reason why every character you meet is like funny insane, but it's a very welcome surprise. It's like you and maybe a suicidal woman that is in part responsible for the disaster that are the only people that seem concerned about the myriad dangers afoot. Everyone else is either oblivious to it or preoccupied with some mundane task that has taken precedence in their head, or they're trying to shake you down for cigarettes, which are unsurprisingly tantamount to currency in Poland. Beautiful looking project that doesn't reinvent the wheel of survival horror game design so much as find unique ways of repackaging it. I've not tasted this flavor yet. Lammana, the Lou Island Mystery, is an upcoming Lovecraftian point-and-click adventure game from Darkling Room and creator Jonathan Boakes, whose work I will ride or die for until the bitter end. I've long adored the Darkfall and Lost Crown series, and anything they produce is of a very singular and heartfelt source. Appearing to take a break from their usual fascination with ghost hunting, Lammana switches gears to Lovecraft and is presented in a sort of high-concept style departure as well. There are modern-day 3D interludes where the player walks through a museum exhibiting film reels and ephemera concerning the mystery of a cursed island near Cornwall, where an American paranormal investigator disappeared in the 1920s. Himself belonging to some kind of supergroup society, which includes the likes of Nikola Tesla. As soon as this piece fell into place, I was in. You give me an old-timey secret society that looks into supernatural doings, and I'll follow you into an unmarked van. You then sort of enter these bits of reporting, found footage style, and then the gameplay starts to look more like what you'd expect, but assembled in a charming mixed media way, as though it were built out of old daguerreotype photos, with the odd deviation or indulgence in hidden object sequences, which has long been a guilty pleasure genre of mine, though you won't hear me admitting to that publicly, because on some level I resent such products, as I was made to watch them slowly replace adventure games on store shelves. But, you know, that didn't happen for no reason. They have their appeal. You know, Grandma knew what was up. If there is one thing that's been consistent across the releases of Darkling Room, it's been that none of these games look like other games, and also I don't know how or why they came to look that way. So this is more enchanting and mysterious to me than, like, you know, Horizon Zero Dawn or something. I've seen things that look like that. I've not seen this. To be expected, there is a familiar, comforting even, stuck-out-of-time quality, perhaps amplified now that there are several graphic styles integrated. But it's great to see that Boakes hasn't lost the desire to create and experiment in the genre that was my first love and is, in large part, informed by his work. Mourning Tide is an upcoming Lovecraftian horror fishing game, which seems to be becoming a genre in itself lately, from developer Liquid Squid. I was again a little apprehensive about including this one because I have no idea what a full game would look like. As it stands, the demo seems very self-contained. It has a beginning, middle, and end. But hey, if there's more of this that makes sense, then I'm all for it. It has a gritty, grimy art style that exists in a place between like PS2 and Dreamcast, but either way very atmospheric and eerie for a game where you're literally just fishing as far as I can tell. Going into it, I didn't expect much from the actual act of fishing. Maybe like the mashing of buttons or a stamina bar sort of situation. But to my surprise, the fishing minigame was pretty challenging, and by the end I was sweating and I had knocked over several cans, trying trying to reel in a weird, fucked up fish with a human face. The line is pulled in various directions, and you have to quickly sweep and pull in the opposite direction while keeping within a little box. And each time, the boxes will change shape or include several boxes, as well as other alterations, making it progressively more difficult. It's actually kind of amusing watching this back because it seems so peaceful as a recording. Meanwhile, chaos is happening on the other side of the screen. There isn't much of a story expressed beyond you're a fisherman who's going through a lot, and times are bad enough that even though the fish you pull become increasingly cursed and inedible looking, wheezing and murmuring at you on the line, it doesn't seem to snap you out of whatever hallucinatory stupor you keep slipping into. The sea nooses are trying to drag his ship into the deep, and he's just like, ah shit, not this again. Now, back to fishing.
Well, looks like my luck's turning around.
Mystery of the Malign is an upcoming mystery puzzle game from developer Gameplay Supremacy, and this game concerns a group of amateur detective types led by a guy named Christopher as they investigate the strange circumstances surrounding a woman who was attacked outside of a museum. But there is sort of a opening sequence that we don't see, so there's a lot missing on my end. There is a heavy emphasis on gathering clues, determining what is related, and piecing them together Mad Lib style, not too dissimilar from the also great Golden Idol series. You'll be interviewing witnesses, collecting samples, using gadgets, and conferring back and forth with the other characters that all seem to have their own specialization, like one who is kind of the spiritual of the group and so forth. It's not so overt in the demo, but it's clear that these guys are paranormal investigators of a fashion, and they've involved themselves in this woman's life to protect her from someone targeting her, and to suss out whether or not it may be their kind of job. Visually, it's an endearing mashup of modern and retro that plays like a point-and-click game with much more attention to detail required. This is already a lot for a small team to handle, but interestingly, this game, despite all appearances, is also set in a fictional world and city that has its own glossary of terms to familiarize yourself with, which it thankfully includes little reminders for. This confident sense of place of its own world is pretty impressive, on top of it already being subject matter that is very much in my wheelhouse. It's been a while since a game that is so dialogue heavy and mostly consists of you walking around looking at garbage on the floor or trampled flowers had me completely engaged and very disappointed when the demo ended. Consider me eager to unravel the mystery of what its title even means. Even though it's a unique work of fiction in which any similarity to any person living or dead is purely coincidental, I see what you're doing here, and you're not going to hear a peep out of me. So I get it, I support it, and that's all I'll be saying on that. Wink, wink. No, I'm Not a Human is an upcoming horror outbreak simulation game from developer Trioscaz. Following some kind of world-ending solar event, it is made impossible to go outside during the day. You can't even look outside or your eyeballs will explode. Night is the only time people can venture outside to find proper refuge, which is apparently your house. Unfortunately, with the sun's overactivity came the visitors, beings that kind of look like people, kind of act like them, but they want to kill you. So every night you'll have people show up at your door where you can ask them some general questions about what their intentions are and decide to let them in or turn them away. Once inside, you'll be steadily fed possible warning signs for visitors by news broadcasts, things to check them for, teeth that are too perfect or dirt under their nails, and then you determine what is to be done about that.
Oh dear. Oh dear. And I did so appreciate your bob.
Shame.
It doesn't help that they all look fucked up, so first impressions don't mean much. Despite the darkly comedic tone, it's actually really great at fostering anxiety and worry and even sorrow for its cast of weirdos, especially for someone who thinks letting someone in their home is terrifying even without otherworldly imposters to worry about. I've literally had this nightmare where there are too many people in my home to keep track of. I can't keep an eye on all my video games. My nest egg! Sometimes guests will just disappear or move around, and even this subtle change was enough unnerving. There's also this voyeuristic horror story playing out each night just by looking out your windows and learning the fate of your neighbors, seeing FEMA puttering about taking readings, or seeing what eldritch horror awaits you should you exit. It's just a well-executed, elegantly creepy idea, as though you took the paranoia and mistrust of the thing and fed that into a smaller social setting, almost like turning it into a party game, where you don't really get to confirm whether or not you killed the right person. You're just left to wonder as the goalpost of evidence continues to shift. But I guess you're still alive, so you must be doing something right. One-Eyed Likho is an upcoming folk horror puzzle game based on Slavic mythology from developer Morteshka. Right away, it must be said that this is a very beautiful looking game with effective use of sparse lighting, grayscale, and that sort of square aspect ratio that The Lighthouse was presented in, during cutscenes at least, which are also sort of interactive. Scenes are stitched together with a film's timing. It reminded me a bit of the game Virginia, in that you'd perform some simple action within the cutscene that makes it hard cut to another scene. Much of the demo is spent walking through cavernous spaces in pitch black darkness, aside from the flickering light a lit match offers, as you solve little item-based puzzles and learn more about the folktale that its plot draws from, concerning a being of pure evil that a drunken smith seeks out, having become bored with life's monotony and lack of magic. The whole thing is guided by a dream logic that ignores spatial reasoning and is more concerned with the dark beauty of its setting. It's not boringly photorealistic, rather stylized slightly, and features some feats of programming that were downright mesmerizing. I spent a good while just looking at the way they depicted shorelines, water coming in and out, while a sort of sea spray reacts dynamically with the geometry of the level. I don't think I've seen this rendered so lovely in a game before. And again, not realistic, just pretty, and obviously important to their vision.
Hey, buddy. Now, you better still be there when I turn around. God damn it.
I have no real frame of reference for the original concept they are incorporating into their own thing here, but I felt engaged and ready to learn. There's a lot of Catholic imagery and reference to hero myths, showing this psychological clashing of real and magic that I can absolutely see myself, pretending to understand fully someday. Parkside, Decayed Soul Manipulation is an upcoming immersive sim from developer Banana Hardsoft, and I had meant to include this one in a previous Next Fest video that I wound up scrapping for reasons I don't remember, so this is a bit overdue, because this is one of the more exciting projects I've followed for a while now. This game is set in the distant future of 2038 and follows a hacker named Alexander Petrovic, who is kidnapped and forced to work for a secretive group called the Illuminated Brethren of Conclave Automata, themselves responsible for the near dystopia that has befallen California. Following instructions from a deity named the Divine Rod, the Brethren make Alexander pilot a sort of assassin drone called Polyphemus in order to do their bidding, as we see in the demo, take out enemies or work to destroy evidence of the Brethren's existence. Fittingly, there are a variety of ways to approach each of your goals, and room to just wander off and find something neat like a cache of weapons or money. You can walk in the front door blasting, do some reconnaissance to play it smart, like one sequence we play where you can cause a gas leak that knocks out a group of guards, or you could have just gone stealthy through a vent, and there are plenty of abilities and other means of entrance in between. Parkside greatly understands the objective of the immersive sim and provides you many ways of avoiding chaos, as well as maybe slightly more means to cause chaos. Though it might be too early to tell if, that is bug or feature. There's a lot about its machinery that I've yet to fully understand. Sometimes the police would suddenly be alerted by me and open fire even into the crowd that I intentionally hid behind. But I suppose that's not out of character. I was just uncertain what my infraction was. And it wasn't until the second playthrough that I noticed, you can see a marker for your objective. And whenever you come across a secluded place where Alex says, this looks like a safe place to drink, that's because you can drop a save there that takes the form of a magic bottle item. So basically all the things I was complaining to myself about the first time, I would learn you know, that they had thought about that. This is also, as far as I can remember, the only game I have ever played that understands that when you're inside a ventilation shaft, sound will work differently, as it's bouncing off the sides of an enclosed metal cube. So when my ears were fucking blown out after getting into a gunfight while inside one, you have no idea what that meant to me. Oh, it meant the world, how much you took my dreams into consideration. The deal with the one save per level is something I admittedly balked at, because there are moments where I found myself distracted by some weird hole to crawl into, or a promising looking ladder that could lead to some cool rats, and I wound up being ambushed by like a bunch of junkies.
Yo, let's go, little feller. I'm gonna take you on a goddamn adventure and... Oh, hey, guys. Guys!
And I imagine if I had died there, I'd be annoyed at the idea of permadeath. But for at least the length of the demo, this never impeded my enjoyment. It just made me overly cautious, checking every drawer and closet in the city for goodies. There is of course a kitsch to its design, an agreed level of retro tackiness that is a lot of fun. It's always interesting to see projects that are clearly a soup of a lifetime's worth of influence, from its UI to its breakcore soundtrack. It's all unique and unabashedly someone's very specific vision. Also, because there is a Corpus Edax poster in it, I'm only 1 or 2 degrees separated from being in it. So I count those. Pigface is an upcoming first-person shooter with some immersive sim elements, I would say, from developer Tito Loves You, and due to release in early access soon. This is a demo I was baited to click on based on my assumption it had some association with the band, but alas, this game follows a woman with a dubious past who is kidnapped and implanted with an explosive device in her brain and made to perform further dubious acts for her captors. She clearly has a particular set of skills that allow her to launch a shovel like a javelin and behead her foes. Where she picked up these skills, that's none of our business. After all, we support women's rights on this channel, as well as women's wrongs, and as well as women's crimes. Taking the tone and atmosphere of Manhunt and injecting it with the frenetic gunplay and pacing of like Hotline Miami, and the first-person perspective of
Yeah, enter the room backwards, you idiot. Oh, fuck!
There's a lot of tension to its combat that is a hard thing to nail, but this game handles that quite deftly, where you have every intention of doing a stealth run, and then it goes sideways real fast, causing you to sprint into the first dark corner you can find, and then just sit gun aimed at a doorway, and you'll find yourself very quickly causing so much violence that you didn't anticipate that there would be an eerie silence afterwards. Just taking a beat to marvel at how crazy a situation I've got myself mixed up in. Melee and guns all feel weighty and impactful, which adds to the feeling of severity to it all. In between levels, you can hang out at your apartment and purchase equipment off the dark web that you can then equip on the van ride over, including masks, which give you different buffs. I forget if they drop what era this is meant to take place in, but I would guess because of the inclusion of flip phones, it's also a vaguely Y2K setting, which I respect because I think the inclusion of smartphones in video games and most media is, like, shit.
Oh yeah, I'm sending a pic of this to Cheryl. There's a new Annie Oakley in town, don't you know?
The levels are essentially sandboxes, so there are multiple points of entry to any given location, as well as a degree of stealth that is possible, so that is my loose criterion for whether or not I can invoke the name of immersive sim in relation to this title. But, you know, your mileage may vary. I'm not gonna argue the semantics of emergent gameplay, like, hey, a guy in a fucking smiley mask emerged from the shadows, so I shot him. So... SSR Wives: The Murder of My Winter Crush is an upcoming surreal retro survival horror adventure game from developer Hen Studios. This was one of the bigger surprises of this round of demos because I like to think I'm pretty good at clocking whether or not I'd be into a project, I'm a good cover of book reader, but just as far as, games I might like. This one was kind of a gamble. I'm not usually drawn to things like anime visuals or, harm coming to low poly rats. But what a ride this was. Whatever plot they had in mind for this takes a backseat for the demo, but I'm sure there will be one. The title of the game is too descriptive to not make sense eventually, You play as one of a handful of brain rot archetypes that are transported to a dilapidated apartment building. The apartment building in Silent Hill 2? Imagine if that was like the whole game. Well, to be fair, I don't actually know if that's true. You might be leaving the apartment building. Taking the demo at face value, it's just the apartment building game. But if like every apartment in that building was a themed nightmare of its own, or just a cozy room to save your progress at in iMac G3, I think. According to the Steam page, there will eventually be a haunting narrative and romantic interpersonal intrigue. So interested to see how that shakes out. I found this to be a very cozy experience, and the term cozy game has gained more popularity over the years, enough to be a sort of aspirational pseudo-genre, but it's a game like this that truly expresses a natural coziness. For me, it can't be manufactured through a quirky premise and ukulele music. It's just hyper-fixating on certain things you found neat in any genre, like a variety of food items with fun 3D models, or door-opening animations. It just feels right that we see the door do that. For those 2 seconds, everything feels like it's gonna be alright. You don't know it's gonna be on the other side of that door. It could be a whole different good world, a beautiful world. Could be a world that inspires hope. Could be giant rats with 3 eyes. But there's a series of, oh, you liked X thing about X game as well, I see, moments. So it takes its design sense, tank control, grid inventory, resource management, and even the camera work from those games, and then shows no restraint in wielding them, to sometimes disorienting or nauseating effect, which I say as a compliment and with complete admiration for what they pulled off here. I don't often see these love letter type projects aspiring to bend and break the rules of their progenitor. Usually they play it pretty safe and stick to established tropes. But this one is just out there, not pulling a single punch, living its best life. Texnoplazm is an upcoming cyberpunk brawler arena shooter hybrid from developer Mothership Loudspeakers. You know how I just said that I was pretty good at determining at first glance whether or not I'd be into a game? This one scrolled by me and I actually had the thought, no, it looks too much like something I'd like, and therefore it must be a trap. So it was actually one of the last ones I played, and it turns out that I was stupid and an idiot and a fuckface for that. Because I should have trusted my gut, it's steered me wrong through everything in life except for gaming. Told by what sounds like the Tekken narrator speaking into a guitar amp, we learn that this game takes place in a vague futuristic Europe somewhere, in a world where magic has been harnessed such that it is almost indistinguishable from technology. You see, it's usually the other way around. You play as a doll, a synthetic companion that has broken directive and chosen to fight against the gang that sold her. This is a game that encourages fast, fluid movement, sprinting up walls, and performing acrobatic melee attacks. So there was a bit of a learning curve that I can't say I fully learned the rhythm of, but I'm sure someone younger could a lot easier. Every once in a while, I'd pull off something sick that I didn't know I could do, and that was very exciting, causing me to clap into the cold emptiness of my home. Combat is very melee focused, and even when you have a gun, it retains that sensibility. You can still block and parry using the gun, like Equilibrium or some shit. It is so millennial-minded, from its urban gothic visuals to its techno soundtrack. I could just be imagining this, but I feel like it has the same color palette as like Primal, where there are these dark stone ruins lit by unnatural pops of color. It doesn't seem like the story will have that great a presence throughout, could be proven wrong, but either way, that is more than made up for in style. We're out here putting spikes on SMGs? Fuck, where do I sign up? Alright, that's all I got for now. Wishlist or follow any of these if you thought they looked interesting. But I don't know why I leave that decision up to you. Just do it, please. If you want. Fuck. As you can see, many games to look forward to. Though the planet's future looks bleak, the future of gaming is safe and secure. I have to say to myself, Flash in the night,